Cool. You have a podcast. Me too. Welcome everyone to another episode of Cool, You Have a Podcast, where honestly it's not that cool to have a podcast, but we're doing it anyways. And today I have a guest for you. So today's guest, we've had him on before. If you watch season 1, it's called Why the Health with Chef Mikie, who's a good friend, and he is an expert chef and an expert just on health and nutrition and overall wellness. And so I wanted to have him on today just to, we get into a bunch of different stuff. And I think you guys will enjoy this podcast. It's a little bit longer than what we're used to, or if you're watching or listening, what you're used to, but we kind of just shoot the shit for a minute, talk about some good stuff, some of the more existential things that are taking place today. If you like this content, whether you're watching or you're listening, go ahead and give us a subscribe, a thumbs up. Let us know in the comment section below what you think. And yeah, let me know what you think about what I think and what we think. Now it's like, I want to teach people critical thinking. And by having conversations with people like Joe Rogan style, we're talking about all different subjects. We're looking at things that are quote unquote controversial, but like, why not have the conversations? It only makes sense to me, but people our age, or millennials, like, don't know how to do that. You have your bias, and then you confirm your bias with the information that you intake, and then it just keeps confirming just your one way of thinking about things. And
yeah, it's really easy just because of how social media is set up and the algorithms and stuff. Like, you have to search it out. I was talking because I talked to my mom, and she was like, they live in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and so they're like, we have to also support like police officers. Like, you have family members that are police officers, and I'm like, yeah, no one's saying like don't also, like, there's a small percentage saying defund and like fuck the police or whatever. There's a small percentage of people saying that. No one's saying, don't support them. And she's like, I don't see anyone doing that. And I'm like, well, like, are you just kind of letting the media come to you? Or are you like looking for other sources? Because they're just set that way. They know what you believe in, and they want to continue to push that. So it's like stuff that you enjoy. But yeah, you just see the same shit over and over.
Yeah. And especially like even with the protesting, the rioting, the looting, this and that, depending on what side you're on, like you said, you only get that information. It takes, for me, I get my information on Twitter. I follow a bunch of like people on all sides of the spectrum of politics and health and wellness and all that kind of stuff. So I get to see their data and links to other sites, rather than, I'm not going to go to Fox or CNN and look up, my news of the day or New York Times, because it's just, you know what you're getting. Well, at least I do. Some people don't. They're like, no, this is the news. This is real life. And it's like, nah.
You getting your stuff from Don Lemons?
That dude pisses me off so much.
I'll look at that stuff for like 5 minutes or something, like just to see how absurd it is and what they're talking about too. But yeah, you got to look at other stuff. That Hill is great. Rising.
The Hill.
Have you watched that? With the guy and the girl.
They do, they do a great job. The one's a liberal, one's a conservative, or at least, and they come at things from a rational perspective. I think The Hill is great. Yeah. And
they're pretty good. So if I'm catching up, I try to go to see what they're saying, but
that's what more news should be like,
well, and like you said, having these conversations, sometimes I'm like, oh, all people are doing is talking. But at the same time, that's what we need. We do need more of the conversations to happen that are like unedited, just to get more, to spread the awareness, and I think for like working everything out too, is like the reason, I want to do these kind of things and start a podcast. And just like, sometimes you forget to work out your own ideas, and this just talking about it, even if it's the same thing, you can listen to like the same the same topic talked about by 5 to 10 different people or whatever, 10 different podcasts talking about the same thing, but you like get something different from each one, you slightly different, or it allows you to like see your own perspective in a certain way. But yeah, you don't really, unless you're like writing and journaling yourself, or you're just like consciously thinking, like sit down and be like, oh, how do I feel about this situation? You don't really get that answer.
Yeah.
You know, so podcasts and conversations get you there. You usually, you know how it's like, you usually ask, the best way to almost like psychology, it's almost just to like listen. You're not telling people what to do, you're listening, and then you might ask them questions that get them to their own answer. That's like how people get there, for me at least,
and or refine their own opinions or ways of thinking about something. That's for me the reason I love having conversations with people on, you know, politics or religion or whatever it may be, is because then I refine why it is that I'm saying the thing that I'm saying, or think the thing that I think. And because you're going to get some pushback and people are going to give you a different perspective. So it's like, oh yeah, why do I think like this? And then you start to like map out why it is that you do. And that's why conversation is so important, but it's being stifled. You know, it's being seen as wrong. Like I've had people tell me, you know, right now is not the time to ask questions and to talk about things. We want answers. We want solutions. It's like, well, the only way to get to that is by having the conversation and allowing for all sides to speak. But now I always come back to this. I think it's the dichotomy of like good and evil. It's, I'm on the right side, the virtuous side. Therefore, the other side has to be evil. And so from there, you can't even have a conversation. You know, you can't work to get any solutions with that way of thinking. And then I think it's like also, you know, like Friedrich Nietzsche's death of God. Well, we killed God, so we have to replace God and morality with something. And we do that with social justice, and we do that with, social justice, justice that is made up on the spot and is constantly evolving and ever changing. You know?
Yeah, it's a weird place to be. And he was like, he didn't mean, when he said God is dead, he meant it in a bad way. Like, not like that's a better thing in religion. We like our future is in religion or whatever. And he meant it in a bad way, without faith. And that's how I see it. It's not like you have to necessarily believe in God or a specific God for sure. But if you don't necessarily have, like, not to say atheists or agnostics can't be like good people, because I still kind of feel like I'm an agnostic, right. But I think that there's something else. There's like a belief you're like looking forward to something at minimum, and that I think can propel us forward rather than into like nihilism. You know, it was like not a good thing when he said that. He's like, we have to replace it with something. But now you're saying that we've replaced it with, so we're flawed. We're so flawed. So like we can't really even replace it, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I looked up Karl Marx in like when he was alive, and Nietzsche and Marx were alive at the same time. And so I was thinking, I don't know this, but I wonder if there's any correlation between Marx's findings and theories and Nietzsche saying what he's saying, you know, because we were replacing, you know, after the Enlightenment period and moving from faith-based reality to fact-based reality, we kind of just put faith out the window completely. And so, and so now we're trying to replace it with something, and Marx comes out with the power struggle, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. It's and the overthrowing of the ones at the top, and then that grows and matures, and then people who run countries have that idea in mind, and then create wars, and so I don't know what the solution is, but it's like conversations that at least can make us think of like, oh, you know, maybe the idea of faith is not so bad, because what comes with it? Because we have I think it's legitimate, but we have this idea in mind that if, you know, someone who has faith also is a homophobic, a racist, misogynist, hates everybody, and then just
Yeah,
uses
the
God
literal
as a,
interpretation.
yeah, which, and there's some merit to that based on how people have acted in the past and even still today with like, Westboro Baptist Church and stuff. Like, you're all going to hell. Uh, but it's just, yeah, it's interesting. I think we do need a little bit more faith. It doesn't matter what religion.
Yeah.
They all kind of say the same thing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I feel like the science and the facts, they kind of just they don't have to, like that dichotomy that you were talking about, that doesn't have to exist. I think the further we go and the more that we understand science, it's just proving what mystics and people in Eastern civilizations have been talking about forever. Like all the woo-woo things, even though some things have become so cliche, I don't even know, pick any of them right now, but anything that sounds super woo-woo and spiritual, they're just proving it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like the Big Bang, it sounds like the most woo-woo shit I've ever heard, but I think that's how it's going to be. That dichotomy doesn't have to exist on like a science and faith kind of element, and it doesn't have to exist in the way we live with disparaging classes, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I mean, I don't know why it's so divided, why it gets to that point. Is it just because like you can't relate to people after a while? You have to, I mean, you obviously can relate. I actually had this thought the other day where it's like usually people stick to either their own kind or their own social class because they relate more. Right. And in a sense that makes sense, but it's almost like a cop-out because it's like, yeah, on the superficial level, everything that we're attached to, like everything that our ego wants, and it's like the surface stuff, might have the same cars, like say you and I are rich. It's like we might have the same cars, we might have the same like issues, we might have the same expenses, that kind of stuff, live in similar areas. But at the basis of everything, we're literally all the same. So I think people just like it's like work to get to that point. The most relatable thing at the core level is that we're all human, and we all have like parents or have had parents. We've all had friends, people, like everybody that we know is going to die and we're going to die. Like there's so many things that if we choose to see it that way, that we can relate to every single person. Yeah. But we just look at it on like the surface level of everything. Like I can't relate to you because you've never made over 50K and I make 50 million a year. It's like, that's like a cop out.
Yeah, no, what sounds to me like there's good tribalism and there's bad tribalism. You can either use tribalism to like build on the things that you relate to with other people, or you can use it to judge people and other tribes, and that's kind of what we're doing today is like we're condensing ourselves into like tribes, and then there's good tribe, bad tribe. And you can't relate with this tribe because, fundamentally, morally, there is no common ground. But you're right. It's all surface level. It's very not like novice or what's elementary, it doesn't take much thought to just pick a tribe and then stay there and just be comfortable and just shout the tribal sayings, believe in the tribal God. And then the other tribe is bad. Takes no thought.
It's almost that people are lost in thought, and that's the reason that we're there. If we stop thinking, like in that sense, if you would just return to like presence and drop the ego. If you think about like the ego is just all of your thoughts and attachments. If you dropped all of the thoughts, that's where we would, like the veil, the illusion of everything would disappear, and then we would realize that we have those commonalities. It's almost like the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I totally get that. And that
it seems like that's the answer. It might sound out of reach, but I've been thinking about, I had a conversation with a couple of my friends last week. Like my friend Russell is like mixed 7 different ways, part of it being African-American. And I just like to check in. It's not in a like, I'm going to ask my black friend how he's doing, just like how do you feel about the whole situation? But literally, like, how do you feel about the whole situation, just to get a different perspective. And I've had, like, all of the Black friends I have kind of have all these different answers. I have some that are out there at every rally with like a megaphone. I have some that are like a little more low key. Maybe they like guns and whatnot. Like, they have different beliefs, but
Right.
are also like really religious. And then I have some are kind of like in between, you know, and they're just like doing their activism in their own ways, but they're not like so rah, you know, they're more like level headed, everything. It's very interesting to see how all that pans out person to person. So I kind of had that conversation, and I was thinking that exactly what I was saying. It's like the only way that we can get over things is if we drop our egos and we almost like drop all the labels that we've accumulated. And it's really easy for me to say as a white person to be like, we have to drop, almost like not be proud of who you are and what has made you, all the content that you've put together from the time that you were a kid until now. You don't have to forget them forever and like not be proud, because you should be proud. And those are the things that like make you happy. They do make you on this plane. They do make you. But yeah, below it all, it's like you almost have to like let all that go to see that even ground and to be able to communicate with people. It's like at what point how do I say it? It's so hard to say without like,
Yeah.
it's like dividing and creating more boxes. Yeah, it's like between all the races. Obviously, it's such a huge issue right now.
Right.
But it almost keeps us in the boxes. And in order to do that, live cohesively within the same big box, whether it's America or whatever, you have to be able to like let go of it, at least in conversation, at least acutely, you know? It's a weird thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that I've been thinking about a lot as well. And I think a lot of people just like what is the solution? And I think you're completely right. It's the simplest one. But sometimes it's the hardest to drop your egos, to drop the attachments, and take a step back and then be able to look at what it is that you were thinking, why it is that you think, and all of that. I think we had the opportunity with coronavirus to do so. We had the opportunity because those daily attachments, we get so caught up in the world and working and the hustle, the grind. And then all of a sudden, everything is paused, not just here, the whole world, you know? And so we had the opportunity, I think some people took it, but we had the opportunity to take a step back and to really think about our choices and why we do what we do. I think it also stoked a lot of the bent up pressure, and it kind of just snapped. And so I think that's what we're seeing now is like the floodgates have been opened, but we could have taken this time to unite. I think really it all comes down to it's an election year. So that really does affect things. Yeah. Also, the man who's the president does affect things as well, you know, and the whole dichotomy of good and evil, and he's the evil, all of his supporters are the evil, and we're on the good side, so we're fighting evil. And also, like, he's a Nazi, so it's okay to punch Nazis, like, you know, or to kill Nazis. So that logic makes no sense. I was not saying that he is. I'm, you know, the ideology.
That's what people say. Yeah.
Yeah. But we had the opportunity to take a step back. But yeah, have you taken a look at like what you do is, you know, is really health and wellness and nutrition and all that. Has this time like given you more of an ability to think about what it is that you do and how it is that you're affecting people and the benefits of nutrition and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, I've literally taken a lot of time. I don't want to say off because, you know, I'm continuing to work and actually like at the beginning of coronavirus, there was a dip, obviously, because there was just so much uncertainty. So I lost a lot of clients and everything. But since now it's kind of like actual business is better than ever. Because especially because as a private chef and like a health coach, COVID has brought in all of those things to the forefront. People, they're like tired of not being able to eat at restaurants and eat like really good food. And they're also, realizing that their health is super important. So, in that sense, I'm really grateful. It's been awesome. But as far as like the content and even the content that I was doing before, I've taken a step back, for months. I think it's probably been like 3 months that I was probably since I've been doing really anything. I'm still posting on Instagram. I'm still kind of paying attention, but I've almost done like a little like retreat, like a wellness retreat in my own home and in my own head. Because it's like whether it's COVID or whether it's like the Black Lives Matter movement, I feel like especially everyone should do this, but especially me, someone who is not African American. How do I want to relate? How do I want to help? What do I really think about the entire situation? Does the content that I was making, is it the best? I'm not sure. It's just like all these questions you have to ask yourself, and it might be, everything might be fine. But yeah, I've been really trying to figure out how do I redirect the ship in a new place. I think we do that anyway. Like a lot of times you'll like go hard, which I went like super hard for many months, doing like four videos on YouTube alone. And then it was, doing all the stuff for Instagram and TikTok and everything on top of that. And so I went really hard on it, but I felt like it was a good time. It's almost like all this stuff is like, it is the right time. 2020 has been like the worst, shittiest year ever. Everyone's saying that, and it hasn't been great, but you don't always have to like label things as good or bad, because it's almost the same thing. You have no idea what's going to come out of it always. So you just have to take that time to step back and reconsider what you're doing, which it's been really good. I mean, I feel like, you want to talk about like ego and everything. I went back and just read a ton of books that first like impact me and change my life, like Way of Superior Man and like Eckhart Tolle stuff. And I feel like I'm at like a ground level better than I ever was before. It's not like my ego is completely dead and I'm like this perfect person, but I feel like I'm way more level-headed. And stepping back from social media in general, because of how fiery is and everybody's like at each other's throats at all time, I was seeing myself being completely like triggered at everything. It'd be like, people are this way, people are that way, because you're just like seeing the same thing over and over. Right. And you just get lost in that trap and not being able to see outside of it. So I had to step back. And in a way, it's like you come to the realization that it's not just that people are like this or people are acting like that, but you always have the choice to choose how you react. And if my first reaction is like stress or to get angry and frustrated, not to say that you shouldn't be angry and frustrated at certain things that are happening in the world, but you can't come from that level. You can't come from anger and frustration. It might, you know what I mean? There's every action that you kind of like try to initiate in your world. If you're coming from anger, it's never going to work. Like you're just fueling the fire. So if you want change, you have to step back and evaluate it and come at it from an even keel, and then really try to figure out like what's the best foot that I can put forward, Yeah.
And also, like you're saying, it's like I haven't really posted much. I get this podcast going, but I haven't really posted much as well, because it's like, well, it seems like there's way more existential issues right now, that it's like, why should I, post a selfie or like me with my 6-pack abs, on Instagram? It's just so dumb.
Which you do have, sir.
So it's like, what is the right thing to do? So going back, I do think that COVID-19 and it it's allowed for us to, for some of us to get angry, some of us to demand change, to be a part of the change, to change how we do things, to relook at our lives and the way we think about issues.
The movement would not be the same. Like
if we all had jobs and were working, absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean, it took, like, it's the perfect storm of things in a sense, because, the George Floyd thing, it took that video to be so ridiculous and so brutally awful and clear and evident, like 9 minutes of footage straight, unedited. It took that, and it took like all that downtime for people to be like, whoa, like this kind of stuff is still happening. You're right. But go ahead. I interrupt you.
No. Yeah. And once again, it's also an election year. So the stakes are higher, because like, really it's looking like Trump is going to win again. And I think that people see that. And so it's like, well, and I think that's demanding more, like action now. We got to take action now. We got to, point out the flaws. It keeps coming back to me. It's COVID-19 and it's election year. And that's why so many things are being brought up right now. And not to say that that's good or bad, it's necessary. I think there's a shift right now that is happening in America and the whole world is watching. But we got to come at it with the level head. We got to come at it without that ego. But ego is necessary, in order to make decisions and to create hierarchies of need and be able to, you need ego. But the kind of ego that we're talking about, and the kind of letting something trigger us and coming at the situation with that initial emotion, which is typically anger, it's not going to help anything.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not seeing solutions. Like, I don't know about you. Have there been really any solution other than like defund the police and we got to stay locked down for the rest of our lives and just wait for this vaccine and all this? I don't see any real solutions being presented.
No, they're bullshit ones. They are kind of bullshit ones. It's just, and it's like, it's not very well formed or organized. That's the issue. Is like if you think about civil rights movements in the past, they've kind of all had a leader, right? And I felt this about like Occupy back in the day when it happened. It's like everybody's together, but there's not really a leader. Right. And in history, we've always had a leader. All great things. I think there's always been someone relatively at the helm of what's going on. And it seems like Black Lives Matter, if Black Lives Matter, the organization is the best leader that we have, it's obvious that that's unclear. We have no idea what's going on within that organization. Like the movement and the premise of Black Lives Matter, sure. I don't think there's very few people that are not behind that.
Right.
But the organization seems a little sketchy or has ulterior motives or whatever, and like it's attached socialism.
Their motives are very clear if you go to the website. And
that's a good point.
And so I think you're right. There is no leader. We're all behind the initial idea and the demand for change, but then you go to the organization, the actual organization, and they're talking about things that, like, I don't think most people even stand by. That we're trained Marxist organizers and we're here to destroy the nuclear family unit, which is, it doesn't make, and I don't think most people even understand that. I think that we can all kind of agree too, that family is extremely important, and driving forward that nuclear family unit is extremely important. Creating more divisiveness within the family is, I mean, unless the goal is really to burn this country to the ground and then to build from the ashes, then that makes sense.
Those aren't the people that want me building from the ashes.
No, I don't think.
And it's you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Yeah. Like, there's definitely a lot of things that need to be changed, but we are also like the greatest experiment that's ever been attempted. And there's so many good things that are coming out of it. So many great people that are American or around the world that are doing great things to make the world a better place. It's not just this, you know, like the argument. I think Jordan Peterson said an argument like one time everybody's like bitching about it on their iPhones. Like people are activists to a certain point, but you're not like protesting that, you know, kids are making your iPhone and like people are trying to commit suicide. You know,
right?
Because it's just like
right, and they have
there's a certain level to everyone's. Yeah, what were you saying?
Are you talking about like the people that are actually working for these companies? Like in Japan, they have nets around the building because people are committing suicide at a really high rate. Yeah, no, you're right. We are all bitching from our phones.
Where's your level of activism? You could choose. There's a million things that you could be an activist about right now. Just like the organization of everything, and taking everything with a grain of salt. It's like it's also giving you everything. We have a platform. Like I feel like the history of the world has just been complete. Everyone was just a complete savage. You know, if you look back and they're trying to cancel every founding father and every person, whatever, that's ever lived. And it's like, yeah, that was real shitty. And they were probably all real shitty just look at the times.
Right.
Right.
But we're more moral now. And so we're judging the past based on our moral standards of the present.
Yeah.
And if you do that, all of history is canceled. Every
like
country,
everyone,
every nation, every group of people, we have been savages.
Everyone.
Yeah, I think the most important thing in this, and I think what we're really driving at is, like you said, taking information with a grain of salt and critically thinking about it, taking a step back, not letting that emotion drive. The emotions are okay, but not letting that drive your actions. Or even your conversations, because how are we going to get to any solutions if anger is our driving emotion in anything?
Yeah,
you just can't.
Yeah, I feel like most people they don't even understand that you can drop your emotion. Like there are so many people, and it's, you know, it takes forever. I don't think I really realized that I could do that till I moved to LA. When I moved to LA, I was like 25. Every time I ever tried to meditate before that, I fell asleep. You know, like I was doing some like P90X yoga in Pennsylvania, and I would just fall asleep at the end of every workout. They would do like a little meditation.
Right.
There's no, like, I was trying to meditate, but there was no like real self-realization there. And then it was even like years after that, coming to LA and kind of absorbing the culture. And then you realize that at any moment you can drop your ego. You can drop, like, your thoughts aren't even your own thoughts, probably. Who knows why? It's like nature versus nurture. It's like all of our experiences, are we picking them up from like somewhere else and other people's level of consciousness? Like, where are our thoughts coming from? We just like think that our thoughts are our own. And that's mostly where people are coming from. It's like, I had this thought and it's true. You know, most people aren't even aware that you can drop that and then come from a state of just like no emotion.
Yeah.
So it's like, we have to get so many people to that point. You can't even tell people like that. Like if you're having a conversation or argument with somebody who's angry, you can't just do what I said and they'll be like, what? You know, it's going to take a long time for people to even get to that point. So
unless everybody starts doing mushrooms, legalize mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, that is, I mean, I need to go back in, to be honest, because I gotta have some more self-realization and just get back into my spiritual phase, because I was in like a really spiritual phase, and then I kind of just like, all right, I gotta go back to logic because I'm going a little crazy. And there needs to be that balance, of course. But mushrooms has helped me so much in the past with the dropping of that ego and realizing the essence of the present, and that everything's happening right now, and that these emotions like anger are like are hurting your soul, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that if we if we did some mushrooms as a collective, then we would understand the idea of the collective.
It is a good hack. Because I agree.
Yeah.
Some people use them. It's like you follow certain kind of like health junkies or like self-help people, and they're just always doing something. They're just always like going to do ayahuasca. They're always doing mushrooms. They're microdosing. They're like doing silent retreats. There's just always the next thing.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't need that. I think mushroom, like the first time I ever did mushrooms, for sure opened my mind. That was like after that, like you said, you know, it's like the first time that you can really realize that like there is a collective to everything.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good starting point, but you don't need that. And that's what I think a lot of people understand, because it's a lot of people are going to be like, I'm not doing mushrooms for whatever reason. They might have like ideologies that they're just against it.
Yeah.
Or they're scared of it or whatever, but you don't, people understand, like, you don't need that. You just need to spend more time with yourself and realize who you really are. It's not all the things that we read and we see that we're told or whatever. Yeah. You just need to like spend more time with yourself. And that's like in all of the greatest teachings that I've ever had, every spiritual teaching, know thyself or whatever,
Yes.
like pick one. I don't know.
Seek inwards and know thyself. Yeah, it's so important.
One of my favorite quotes, like ever, I guess it's a quote, but like, be still and know that I am God.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Like it's literally like telling you to meditate and go inward.
Yeah. And
know that you're a part of collect everything as a whole, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All the spiritual, every major religion and idea of spirituality is that it's be still, it's understand thyself, seek inward, spend time with yourself, because and it's so hard to do nowadays. Well, it's not, but you know, you got everything's going on and the hustle and bustle of everything is happening, and there's sirens everywhere. And I think that's why people, you know, maybe go on those spiritual retreats so often, to get away from the craziness. It's like a nice spiritual shower, almost, because you get all dirty in this, especially like in LA, this city.
God. It's so true. Like now more than ever. I saw I literally went on a run for the other day. I live in a pretty good area, a pretty nice area. And 2 blocks from me, I saw a homeless guy shooting heroin into his arm. And, you know, we see everybody, like, there's a lot of people like leaving LA right now.
They're leaving New York, leaving LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. It's definitely dirty. And that's a word that you could describe it as.
Yeah, and use it in many ways. It's definitely very, very dirty. We need a spiritual cleanse. But I also don't see that happening anytime soon. I hope it does. And I hope we can all do some self-reflection. But a bubble needs to pop. And it's going to. And I don't know. I don't know where I want to be when that happens. But But anyways.
Yeah. Why do you another thing I've been doing this whole time, my downtime, is learning jujitsu and considering getting a firearm, you know.
Me as well. I think I kind of came to the realization as well that if we don't have a firearm now, it's almost too late. Every time I've gone to the gun store, there's like one gun store that I've found like in LA, and it's like right down the street from me. I'm sure there's more, but that are at least open.
Walmart, baby. Actually, Walmart probably doesn't carry them here.
I don't think they do anymore. I think they got rid of.
I think certain states might allow it, but
yeah, I'm sure, like Texas and Utah. But no, it is really important to have the ability to defend yourself. Actually, I talked to my mom about it last night. I was like, hey, because they're like conservative, but they don't follow all the conservative like Republican ways of doing things. They don't have a gun. They've kind of been against guns, but they're for, the Second Amendment. But she's like, yeah, we're going to get a gun. And I was like, well,
Oh, your parents said that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was not because they fear for their lives, but just because, tensions have been heightening. And so it's like, it's important to be able to defend yourself. And I need one as well. So she's like, she called me back last night. She's like, hey, if you come down this weekend, my friend's doing a course, like teaching you, how to protect yourself,
That's good.
How do you know, when the protests went into that family's home or like yard, and then they came out wielding an AR-15, and do you see how she was holding that gun?
Yeah, she had no idea how to use it.
First, there was a pin in it, so because it was a prop,
yeah,
and it wouldn't fire even if she pulled the trigger. But still, it was like, you obviously have never shot this gun.
Dude, I mean, it's so important. I've only shot a gun literally like one time. I went to the range with my friends. A guy I used to live with made me not even fire it, but take it apart and put it together. All that's like so important. It's not just like the safety, knowing everything about the gun, but knowing what goes wrong. Like if you pick up a gun and it's loaded and you know how to fire it, okay, great. But what happens when it goes wrong? What happens if it jams? What happens if you have to change a mag or whatever? Like all the other things that come with it are even more important. And so like that, I love that they're doing that course. It's just, and it's like practicing.
Yes.
You're not going to be good at any skill if you don't practice it. And that's what we're seeing with cops. All of the skills that they're supposed to have, so many of them are neglected. They don't get the training or whatever. It's not enough training. It's like if you don't use it, you lose it. That's just a normal thing, no matter what practice you have, whatever skill. Jordan wasn't the same when he came back after baseball. It took him a minute to get into it. They didn't win the championship that year. He came back late. But it's the same thing. It's like he wasn't in basketball shape.
Right.
The greatest person to ever do it. So it's like that's just a normal thing.
Yeah. Are you on the team Jordan over LeBron side?
I don't think it's the same thing.
I know. I hear those arguments.
There's no team.
It's not. It's not the same thing. Also,
even Kobe. Like it's two different times, two different eras. And especially now, like there's so many. As a whole nother conversation. But there's just. The league is so different, and there's so many more superstars right now. There's a superstar on like at least every playoff team. But it's like
everyone is so good.
That's like the league where they could literally pick up. I forget who I heard say this, but they were like, if all of the best stars in the NBA, all the biggest stars decided they wanted to start their own league, they're like the only one that could do it. Like pretty much other organizations, like either the owners or whatever, they have more power, but like the star power that basketball players have, they could literally start their own league and everybody would watch.
Absolutely.
Well, whatever. That's I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Yeah. I wonder if sports will be coming back. And that's the whole thing with, the dates keep getting pushed back with COVID-19. And the data is not reflecting the decisions that are being made don't reflect the data, if that makes sense. Yep. But I want to start talking about the importance of nutrition in this time, because COVID-19 it's a real thing. We can talk about, I have all the statistics of like someone like you're my age, 25 or 30 or 35 or even 40, the likelihood of getting COVID-19 and dying from it, the median age of death for COVID-19, all that stuff. You can also just go to CDC and look this stuff up yourself, which most people won't do. They'll just wait for the figures to come out and then wait for the governors to go through phase 1, 2.5, and 3 or whatever. But in this time, nutrition is extremely important. Correct. So how can we, I know there's a lot of things that you can, health and nutrition is it's a huge industry. It's something that you can, and there's so much information on it. What would be like some of the best ways to like really for your average person to get into health and nutrition, understanding food in order to prevent, you know, the virus from attacking you and this and that?
Yeah. I mean, it's you have to do it, and it's not just the food and nutrition and everything, but it's you have to do everything that's going to support obviously a healthy immune system. But if you're thinking about just food and nutrition, you have to audit. If you want the best results, you have to audit everything that you're doing. So you have to look. I always recommend for like my clients or whatever, even if it's just if they're not really concerned about like the health necessarily or like the weight loss side of things, even if I'm just, you know, meal planning for them, you still want to know like what foods work well with you and which ones don't. You know, longevity, it should be the goal for everybody, just living healthier longer. So I'd send them like a simple, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. So you can like journal it, or you could just be more mindful while you're eating. But I send them like a simple spreadsheet on Google Sheets, and it's like 3 columns, and it's like food. I have like 30-minute increments for the whole day. And then it's the foods that you're eating, it's your activities for the day, and then it's a whole nother column just for notes. So you can, it just gets you in the habit, you know, it's like logging, journaling, figuring out, I did these things at a certain, first of all, it's just like it gives you that point of view. Like, I didn't realize I was doing all this stuff, or like, wow, I like really eat consistently. I never thought, or inconsistently, I never thought that I did this, or like my sleep, like all that stuff kind of matters. You know, if you want to be on the right circadian rhythms for optimal health, you should generally do things at the same times every day. And then, you know, with individual foods, like how do I feel? Say if I ate at this time and then I ate and then maybe I just didn't have as much energy afterwards or whatever. But if I waited and I like fasted a little bit longer, I felt like I had more sustained energy throughout the day. Like there's a million different things that you could think about, or and examples I could give you. But it's just understanding your daily habits is a great place to start without even really, you know, changing anything. Just start documenting the things that you do and audit yourself. And then from there, you have to, once you have it all in front of you, you can look and be like, oh, I eat a way more processed shit than I thought. Okay, like I did this for 2 weeks. I ordered Postmates way more than I probably should. You know, there's a lot of different things like that you can kind of like switch, and then understand that cutting out certain things, you're consuming so much sugar, or you're just like the processed foods in general, and you're eating at restaurants. There's a lot of terrible oils, you know, that's going into that, oxidized oils that are just going to promote inflammation and just damage to your DNA or whatever. Like those are the things that you should start cutting out. It's like understanding the things you do on a day-to-day basis, and then, you know, you could start cutting out the processed stuff. The average person that's like eating well, say if you're just completely eating whole foods, the likelihood that you're not in good shape or whatever isn't very high. And if it is, you know, you have to start to look at other factors in your life. Are you just like the most stressed out person all the time? You know, are you overworking? Are you undersleeping? There's all of those things are going to contribute to a healthy immune system.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it even goes back to what we were saying earlier of the balance of spirituality and like fact-based, logic-based reality. But it's like the Trinity. It's mind, body, and soul. In this time, but just in general, in terms of like longevity, it's mind, body, and soul, making sure that you're taking care of each one of those things. Because there's a million different food programs and ways to get food, and you can go hunt for food, or you can get a box delivered to your door or whatever. But it's the mind, body, soul connection that is the most important thing.
Yep.
What would you say are some like big myths surrounding food and how people should go about eating, or like, is keto the right thing, or this or that?
Well, if you bring up specific diets, one of the biggest myths is that like one diet might be right for just like a certain amount of people, or like this one diet is right for you. Like you evolve, so much. And so like I've, over the years that, excuse me, even the stuff that, if you talk about my journey, I mean, I went through so many different stages of evolution, and at like each stage I was like, oh, this is probably the optimal diet for me. You know, I'm feeling like great. And then you continue to like, you evolve, your body changes, your mindset changes, your overall schedule, like whatever it might be. And then I learn more information, and I'm like, oh, wait. And I get more in tune with my own body. And I'm like, oh, dude, I do feel like shit after I eat this. Like, why? You know? And then you start to like cut more stuff out. And then you like now, I'm like the perfect example of this is because I used to kind of eat like shit, even though I was like an athlete my whole life and I thought I was like doing the right things. But then I realized I was kind of like just over consuming carbs and definitely still eating out, and I was drinking back then. And like, it's weird how you can think you're like, oh, I'm healthy because I'm like in shape and I work out all the time. It's weird how you can think you're healthy, but then when you look back and you're like, I was doing everything wrong, like everything wrong.
Right.
So now I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum where like most of the time I'm eating some sort of like a low carb ketogenic ish, but like I eat carnivore diet almost every day. And now I'm like cooking for clients and whatever. And most people aren't willing to like do that. I don't recommend that for everybody.
Is it for any specific reason? Because I know that carnivore diet, like for like rheumatoid arthritis or whatever, it or like the Petersons went on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it for something specific? I know you said that you have, or you have had a condition, right? A health condition.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would say I have a lot of health conditions. Not necessarily. I mean, like I grew up and I was like, as a kid, I was like hypothyroid. I allegedly grew out of that. I don't know. I used to take like pills for it and everything. And I haven't done that in years. But yeah, I think I just abused my body. I realized that at a certain point when I first started the journey and started to cut out, it's definitely go like more low carb, was like just an immense amount of brain fog and forgetfulness and like low energy and that kind of thing. And like, yeah, ketogenic diets, cutting out a lot of the carbs and sugar or whatever. I think once you retrain your body to like not just use carbohydrates and sugars for fuel, but then you switch over to fat, and then you can do both. I do really recommend a lot of people try that. There's a very small percentage of people that they're not going to do well on a ketogenic diet, like a diet, like a genetic trait that they might have, where it can actually have the opposite effect. So many people lose weight on keto, but it can actually have like an obesogenic effect. So, but that's a small amount of people. So for that reason, to become more flexible, yeah, I always like recommend that you try it and you give it a good run, like a couple months really, because keto isn't something you can kind of like just play with. Most people do keto wrong. They're like, yeah, I tried keto, it didn't work. Most people do it wrong. You know, you should be if you're doing keto the right way, you should be testing your blood for ketones and everything. And it takes a while, like I said, that shift from carbs to primarily fats, it takes a long time. But yeah, so I'll recommend that to a lot of people as a starting point, and then you can become more flexible. I think a lot of the issues that people have, like the Jordan Petersons, the people with arthritis, or people, even just like people that are insulin resistant or have like aversions to certain things, you know, gluten is probably the most common example. By cutting out carbs, whether you just do low carb or a keto diet or a carnivore, that sort of like elimination diet is why it works so well for so many people, because you're cutting out all the shit, and then you can start to like incorporate new things along with being mindful of yourself and maybe like keeping a log or a journal. You're like, oh, I eliminated everything. Maybe all of those things kind of contributed to like your gut, like just destroying your gut, which a lot of people have, some sort of autoimmune disease or whatever. And then once you give that time, maybe a couple of months, and your body starts to heal itself, then maybe those same foods that were fucking you up before, you might be able to deal with now, you know, and some might just not be good for you for a long time. I was eating so much almond butter. I realized that like I was eating way too much almond butter. You're not supposed, if you found almonds in the wild, like it takes a lot of time to harvest and consume any nut, you know. And we just get it in this jar,
Yeah.
and we're just literally like, like the small jars are a pound each.
Yes.
I could eat that in like 2 days. Like that's
Just spoon by the spoonful, or like
yeah.
on
Well,
some.
yeah. I mean, sometimes maybe like a little salt. I would eat it like with sweet potatoes and maybe like some cacao or whatever, like as a dessert.
Yeah.
So good.
But no,
But
you're right. I hadn't thought of that. Like our bodies meant to be able to digest so many and use so many almonds at once. You know, even like almond milk, or these
yeah,
these. I've
like
been
that's
thinking,
a very, when you hear processed foods, I don't like that term. I usually like to call them like fake foods. Process is a weird, vague term. Like a fake food is something that's completely like McDonald's and everything that's in that. Like those aren't real foods. Maybe a long time ago they were a real food at a certain point, but I think process has such a, like, breaking down an animal is technically like processing it.
Mhm.
Getting almonds from their original state into a butter is processing it, but there's varying degrees on like how processed things are. I think process, that's you can get just salted almond butter. There's only 2 ingredients, but then you can also get processed food that has like 50 ingredients in it. So there's a huge scale there, and so I don't necessarily like that, but yeah, I don't know, that's just a weird way to put it, I feel like.
yeah. What do you think about non-dairy milks? Are they, because that's processing, but do they
Yeah.
have real benefit compared to?
There's an argument. I mean, it could be better. Like if you can't do dairy, I have a client right now who's breastfeeding, and she's kind of like fine with it, but her son has an aversion to dairy. And I was working with her and I was telling her to ask like questions to the pediatrician, and we have her right now on goat products. So goat's butter, goat yogurt, because there's like a different casein. It's a different enzyme. There's like A1, which if you go to the store, especially in like small cities or whatever, everything's going to be dairy from A1 cows. There are like Jersey and Guernsey cows. There are a certain amount that have A2 casein. Some of them are mixed. They have both, but then there's some that are just completely A2, and you get that with those Jersey cows, Guernsey cows. You get them with goat and sheep, like some other ruminants. And so, and that's kind of what I do. I feel like for the most part, I'm okay as long as it's a good sourced A1, but I stick to goat products and I love them. I have them. I pretty much have it like every day. I drink like a little bit of milk. I have a little bit of yogurt. It's like, it's super easy. I don't go ham on it.
Right.
I kind of just, everything should be pretty much in moderation anyway. Like the almonds, they might be fine for you. The almond butter, maybe just have 1 tablespoon or 2, maybe. Don't eat a half a jar. That's a half pound in one sitting.
Right.
But so like, the alternative milks, I don't think they're ideal. I think milk is a great thing. I think good quality source dairy, as long as you can do it, that's something that's gotten demonized. If you want to go back to like what was your quote? How did you word it? Like just a myth, right?
Yeah.
Like animal products are so demonized as a whole.
Yeah. I follow this guy called Earthling on Instagram. Is an activist against, all forms of animal products, but he's also doing some good things. Like, factory farming is not ideal. Having, you drive up the 5 and you see hundreds of thousands of cows and pigs just like feet apart from each other, or just like crammed in. Like that's not
Of course,
that's not ideal. But
of course, and
it's definitely demonized.
There's a revolution happening there. Yeah, like every other issue that we were just talking about before. It's just like things are going to take time and more attention. I work with a small farm. They're in Sacramento, but they ship nationwide. Here in LA, they have stores called Belcampo, and they just sell grass-fed, grass-finished, pastured animals,
Mm.
and I feel way better off of them because I think that matters too. It's like it's not just when people say animals are bad, saturated fat is bad, cholesterol is bad. Well, look at the type of animal, how it's raised, its environment, what it's eating. All those things matter. If you're eating an animal that's completely stressed out and you're just like pumping it with foods that it normally shouldn't eat, it's just a weird thing. They're feeding it like grain, corn, all these weird things that kind of just like don't make sense. A lot of them are byproducts. Other farms, they kind of like trade, barter, or sell as long as like the state or whatever permits it. A lot of them are just kind of like for the feed. They're getting byproducts from other, I don't know how farms work, to be honest. But you know what I mean? They're just picking other thing. Another farm does this type of thing, and then they have like this like form of wheat or grass or whatever that's kind of like bullshit, but they don't throw it away. They give it to another farm and then they'll use that. Like there's so many different things, but you are definitely what you ate. That's like the really thing. People don't really understand that or consider it. It's like
Right.
hormone, whether it's hormones or bad food.
We've gotten comfortable with, $1.99 a pound for some hormone-filled red meat, and that's the thing. We've gotten comfortable in a lot of things, and like I said earlier, the bubble is going to burst. Things are going to be changing, and it does pay to get things that are sourced from a better location. You said it's Belcampo Farms.
Yeah, Belcampo Farms. They're a small farm, man. They do it right, and they're not the only ones. If you look for what to look for, you're looking for the information. They're all over the country. Even things like I've never used them, but like Butcher Box and those kind of things, you can get them delivered to your door, and Belcampo does the same thing. And but yeah, it's like people. I've had friends hit me up because I have like affiliate. I've been working with them for a couple months. I have an affiliate code and that kind of thing, and I share it with like my friends and family.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends are like, "Yeah, I looked it up. It's more expensive," but they're used to like this living in a small town, like you said, and they're just paying like nothing for bullshit food.
Yeah.
And it's a very short. Yeah, in the short term, it's very expensive, but like hospital bills are worse. I always say that to people. It's like it's an investment just like anything else. And your health is the most important thing. If you're not healthy, you're not gonna be able to do anything else to like the top of your ability. What good is activism gonna do if you're just like in a hospital? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, in many ways, that is very true.
What are you eating like these days?
You're making me think, because I'm like, and every time I talk to you, I'm like, dang, I'm not doing it right. Because I am one of those people that like, I work out a little bit. I think I'm eating healthy, but at the end of the day, I'm not. Like, I haven't been on any sort of regimen or like program that I put together in quite a while. I was doing vegan for a while, not anymore. At least not for the past 2 years.
What made you switch?
Back to meat. I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't doing the vegan diet right. I was not eating enough protein, really. I lost like 25 pounds. I was like
Damn, really?
It was like 175, and I was like, then I was at 150, and so I'm still gaining weight from that. I look like Skylar showed me some photos. I was really skinny, like when I first met her, and I don't know if you remember. I mean, not like super skinny, but like definitely a lot thinner than I am now.
I'd have to go back and like look at your pictures.
I wonder if no, I do. I think I don't know, but I switched because I was craving meat. For a long time I wasn't. For the first year,
your body was like, dude, we need this nutrients. Yeah.
Actually, my brother, he was doing the same thing, but he had a dream. So he was vegan, just like pretty much like eating fruit and nuts, and he was losing weight too. And then he had this dream where he was like out in the middle of like these plains, and this buffalo was like staring at him. And then the buffalo turned his head to him and said, "I need you to eat me." And so he went like with his bare hands and like started
Dude.
eating the buffalo, and he woke up and he's like, "No, yo, I gotta switch this up." So he went and got a buffalo burger. Um, but
That's
yeah, your
why.
body tells you, whether it's like in your unconscious mind, your dreams, or I think like your body just starts to crave what it needs. And I figure
Yeah.
my body needs meat. And I can switch up diets, but right now I'll look into Belcampo Farms because I've been eating a lot of like just like chicken, and
Yeah.
it's like fat chicken, that's pretty cheap, and so I know that that's not.
Yeah, chickens are like the hardest to come by. Even, you can go to Whole Foods. I haven't been to like Ralph's or like any of the other ones that are here in LA. But like you can go to Whole Foods and they have, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and they have lamb that's also grass-fed, grass-finished. And so those are easier to find quality sources, but like, the chicken and the pork, I still wouldn't really, I limit those a little bit. Definitely the pork, I limit them. But with Belcampo, I'm eating them way more. It's just like not, there's another thing that's gotten so demonized as pork. Yeah, of course you're eating sus pork for sure, but like, where is it coming from? You know what I mean? It's like, it's also, what are you eating with the animals? Because I think the animals get so demonized and saturated fat and cholesterol or whatever, but they get demonized because of certain epidemiological studies, which are complete bullshit. Like, if you don't know anything about the different types of studies, epidemiology could be as simple as like, 50 other people, whatever, are in a study, and they're like surveys. They're calling us up. They're telling us we have to eat like a specific meal or a specific type of diet, or maybe not. Maybe it's just like, do your own thing, continue to eat and live the way you do, and we're going to survey you. And they're like very intermittent. They're sparse in between the surveys. People's memories are bullshit. Like, how well are these people really? There's like unhealthy and healthy user biases. They're just like very flawed. Epidemiology has its purpose, and I'm obviously not a scientist, but it's like, they're kind of like the door. They kind of give us clues. It's like, okay, if we're seeing a correlation in a bunch of data, then we can start to dig in, and then you look for like double blinded. The ultimate thing is like double blinded, placebo controlled studies, because you're able to control the whole thing and understand what everybody's doing and really assess from there. But a lot of the things like blue zones that you see, it's like all epidemiological data. And it's like, yeah, an unhealthy user bias. If people say over the past like couple decades, and animals and saturated fat or whatever have been just demonized completely. So people that don't really give a shit with that in mind about their health, if they don't care about their health at all, they're going to eat a bunch of red meat, and they're also going to be doing a lot of other unhealthier things. They're probably way more likely to be eating that. Well, it's like, are you eating a steak, just a steak that's grass-fed, grass-finished, or are you eating a bullshit hamburger from McDonald's or wherever with a bun and fries? It's like, what else are you combining with those? Not just the meat, but what are you eating it with? And then it's like all your other factors. If people don't care about their health and they're eating something that's been, talked badly about, stay away from meat. Those people might be more likely to like be sedentary. They might smoke, they might drink more. It's a very common thing. And on the other side of it, you have a healthy user bias. So people that are told to like eat less meat, are they healthy because they're eating less meat, or are they healthy because they care enough to be healthy and make other healthy choices? The people that are probably doing that are probably more likely to exercise more, they might meditate, they might do yoga, or you know what I mean? They might just be healthier and make other healthy decisions. It's not just that they've limited their meat, so like, that's epidemiology. You don't really know. But there's not really any, not to my knowledge, obviously, like it takes so many hours to just go over like data and research and studies. I haven't seen anybody else break down peer reviewed, like a PubMed study or anything that's saying that just meat is bad for you. It's like, you want to talk about your immune system. you need cholesterol and you need, like saturated fat to build cells, create new cells. Cholesterol has so many different forms. It's basically like a steroid backbone and a precursor to make all your other hormones. So if you don't have that, it's just like you're using it to build every cell, and your hormones are going to be fucked if you don't have those things. And you see that a lot of times, with vegans, like your hormones are just kind of like fucked.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's this weird thing that I don't know whether it's corporations, companies, it's just overall bureaucracy, but like the demonizing of certain things or the propping up of certain like health foods like kale or avocados or, this diet we're all told from like at least when I was young, saturated fat is bad. And
that has literally that has changed. Like literally they maybe 2 weeks ago or something. The world, I think it was the WHO, which that's a long conversation too. Yeah. I don't know how much you want to listen to them, but I think it was the WHO that took saturated fat off. Like they basically like let it off the hook. So you'll see a lot more of these, even things like American Cancer Society or whatever those things are. There's so many different organizations that's still like, they're supposed to be like leaders in health, but they're way behind the curve.
Yeah.
And you'll start to see them, slowly catch up, or at least like, it's not even catching up. They're still like behind the curve, but they'll update things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in terms of like the World Health Organization and CDC, like you got to look at their studies because sometimes the studies are done very well. Or like even with coronavirus, the data, look at the data. But then it gets into politics when you have the spokespeople coming out and making recommendations based on the data, but the recommendations don't like correlate with the data in the right way. Like the CDC is just being political right now, whereas the data is very clear. And if you just take the time, and the same thing with the World Health Organization, they'll put out a tweet in the beginning that coronavirus is not spread from person to person. Right.
It's so many things wrong.
and it's like, okay, well, let's look at the data, and the data says otherwise. And yeah, it's the way our world works, but you just got to take a little bit of time to like actually look into it. I mean, I've done a little bit too much time looking at the data, honestly, because I want to know that I'm right. And everything else is telling me that I'm wrong. So I'm like, no, I'm right, because I looked at the data, and whether it's on masks or whether it's on the likelihood of me dying from COVID-19 or spreading it to an old person, and whether social distancing works, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You just got to do a little research. It's not that hard.
And the data just does seem pretty clear. Like 99% of people that are getting messed up have another issue, or they're overweight, or they, diabetes.
Comorbidities. And then they're also like 80s, like 80 years old,
Even so, one thing that's really interesting with the younger people, and this is why diet and the foods that you eat are so important. You said, every time you talk to me, you kind of like think about like, I'm doing it wrong. You might not be doing it wrong. But I see a lot of people who are like fit and in shape like yourself, or at least just they're mindful of their health. I have other friends that like, they're constantly ordering out from restaurants, and restaurants, you have no idea what they're putting in. Like even health, like not to blow up their spot, but like you go to a Sweet Green out here in LA, which is just like a healthy salad place. They're using a lot of like healthy ingredients, I'm sure. I don't know where they source things from, but restaurants are cutting all of their oils and their salad dress. It's a salad place. So like they're using all these different salad dressings. They're not using pure olive oil or pure organic olive oil. That's so expensive. So most restaurants are cutting it with like industrial seed oil. These PUFAs is like polyunsaturated fatty acids. They're probably getting a lot it's gaining more heat, where like sugar used to be the devil completely, and now like PUFAs and other linoleic acid, like all these things are like getting more and more demonized. And I think there's a lot of research to that. But my long story short is, like, if you're constantly eating out at restaurants, or you're just cheating. A lot of people think that, cheating once or twice a week isn't a bad thing, but if you span it out, you're cheating a lot over the course of a couple months or a year.
Yeah.
And you're seeing with the coronavirus, even the small amount of people that aren't, because I follow psychopaths in the health space that like take their time to create, it's content, it's their business, but they're like taking time to like look into these people's social media. So like a news headline will be like, young healthy endurance runner or whatever, like dies from COVID. Well, again, it's kind of like the epidemiological thing. You have to look at everything else that they're doing. They look
Right.
like young and in shape. If you want to take the example of an endurance runner, a lot of endurance runners are under an insane amount of stress. They can run like 100-mile races, but their bodies are under an extreme amount of stress. And that's kind of all you need. You can be healthy, but if you're, that's going to suppress your immune system, whether you're not sleeping or you're stressing or whatever. And so you have that, but they're also seeing that like, insulin sensitivity is common, even in people, can be common, and even people that are like, look like they're in shape or they're skinny. So these people that I follow, like these health nerds, basically, they're fine. They'll go on, they'll see the article, and then they'll go and find that person's like Instagram.
Yep.
And then it'll be pictures of like consuming processed bullshit. It'll be like they're eating pizza, they're like drinking sodas still. On the outside, you look healthy, but you might not be metabolically healthy on the inside. And that's what seems to really matter. It's not just, are you at a healthy weight? Are you overweight? Are you diagnosed with something? You might not be diagnosed technically with anything, but the foods that you eat on a daily basis are damaging your DNA, your mitochondria. They're damaging the way that your body kind of like regulates itself and suppresses your immune system. So like, even I've been really strict throughout this time. I'm generally pretty strict, but I've been really strict, especially in the beginning. Because in the beginning I was like I think like a lot of people, I was pretty scared. We didn't know what it was.
Right.
So I was like, I'm making sure I get my 8 hours. I'm making sure that I'm like not overworking out, I'm making sure that I'm eating well. I like cut out alcohol, and now I've like incorporated all those things in a little bit, but it's like people don't really consider those. It sounds small, but people don't really think about that.
It only makes sense though, to make sure that overall you are healthy, so that you have, built up immunity to something like a virus. Also, we have things called like T-cell immunity, which is actually, it's getting some people are talking about it now, like of people like you and I, our age, we've built up T-cell immunity to something like, coronaviruses. And I don't know. I think overall, what you're talking about, just health and wellness in general, is what will keep you healthy when anything comes on. And it's so true that what costs more, like being healthy at the time or the hospital bills later. And we don't think about that kind of stuff.
So it's so important. It is. It's like people are a lot of times just wrapped up in the rat race, the day to day. Full circle, it comes back to just being wrapped up in your own thoughts all the time, that you live so acutely. Like all your decisions are on like a day-to-day basis. Most people don't make changes until it's either like too late, or it's just like, they get a diagnosis. It's always like an afterthought. We procrastinate, like whatever is in us as humans, that like we procrastinate on everything. If we're not mindful about that, we do it. It's the same thing with our health. We're just like, I'm good, I'm healthy. Everyone says that to me. Like,
I'm pretty healthy.
Family and friends back home. Like my dad's like, my dad like makes, he loves to cook and everything, but he'll make beef jerky. And it's like my favorite beef jerky ever. Everyone loves it. I go home. I don't even make it on my own because like I want it to be more special when I go home.
Right.
So like, but when I go home, I'm like, can we just get like grass-fed meat this time? And he's like, I've been eating this for 50 years. Like it's like, dude, yeah, but like, you're all right now, but you might not be all right forever,
Right. Yeah, that sounds good though.
You're not like the model health of all of humanity,
Yeah. Do you have a dehydrator?
I actually just got one thanks to you because I'm feeling inspired about trying to sell something.
Yeah.
I actually like have a bunch of stuff marinated. I'm gonna do a run today. I'm just like planning and gonna prepare a bunch and just play around with like
beef
different
jerky
styles. Yep.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I feel like it's good.
Yeah.
I feel like it's good. And right now, working with Belcampo, I've been getting quality meat, so I might as well take advantage of it and all good things.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. I would love to try some beef jerky. I love beef jerky. It's just like, first it's expensive, So like,
dude, it's
like
I know that's
stuff,
one thing I was
good stuff
like,
is expensive.
The you got to be good with those margins, man.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, I don't know how much you're paying for the beef, but for grass-fed, grass finished, grass raised beef, those margins are going to be pretty damn good.
One good thing about beef jerky is that your shelf life is way longer.
Yeah.
Like I've avoided for a while, and same with yours. It's like you're making sauces that have like kind of all these natural preservatives in them just by the sheer, fact of the ingredients. For a while, I always love the idea of making a product, but it's like the shelf life, food, it's tough. And I was just like excuses really, but beef jerky is like another thing it'll last,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are you going to call it? And have you already like gone through like the business stuff of like what you're going to do? Is it all in pre-production right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's like super early, but I've been really thinking about it. I have a bunch of ideas, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away.
Fuck yeah. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, even like, especially now, like, well, you're already, self-sufficient you're not working for anybody else, you're working for yourself, by getting clients and this and that, but to have something that's generating income is what, like a product, and just generating all forms of income, and investing in the right areas and, maybe some Bitcoin. Do you invest in Bitcoin at all?
I haven't yet.
Do a little bit. So I have like some money in Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'm still like trying to understand it. Like,
that's the thing is like you got to take the time to understand it. And I have in the past gotten in on some things that I did not understand, and you do not do well in those scenarios. So like, it's just come down to me not knowing enough and not prioritizing it to know more. I know, like I used to trade penny stocks and stuff. So, but it's still not the same thing, Yeah. Did you get in when it was like popping or?
I got in. So I should have kept my money in because I got in at 4,000. But not even that much.
What is it right now?
11 something. It's like, I got Coinbase. I think it's down 10,419. Ooh, I should buy some today. Yeah. So I went in at 11 again. So I was like, all right, I want to purchase. I think we are moving to a cashless society. I like the fact that there's a fixed number of Bitcoins. I could see it, being something in the future. And, so I gotta, just
because you can buy like fractions, huh? You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin.
Oh,
right?
no, I can put in $5. And so you get however of a fraction that is of $11,000 or whatever it is at the time. But Yeah, you work your way up, and then there's a bunch of different coins out there. There's like XRP and Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin, and you can also create your own coin. I don't know how to do that. You have to have somebody.
Yeah, like mining. Like I don't understand it. Like Bitcoin mining. I'm like,
I don't either. Like you have these computers that solve mathematical equations, and that's mining of a coin. I don't. Yeah, I gotta. And every time I do a little bit of research, I'm like, wait, what? Okay, I get sort of what
everything's
it is.
just made up.
Yeah. I mean, shit. If we gave value to seashells, that we create the value of things.
100%.
Like paper doesn't. A dollar bill is really meaningless, but it means everything because of
that makes a good point. With everything that's changed, like the change that we want to happen, we have to start valuing the things that are most important.
Yeah.
So if the more people start valuing grass-fed beef, or the more people sad, so fucked up to like even think, but like the more people start valuing Black lives, it's like that's when change is going to happen. It's like when more value and more attention is brought to you.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to end this.
Cool. You have a podcast.